a brother named Terrence Howard was on Billy Carson's show yesterday, Forbidden Knowledge. I happened to watch it. It was over 10,000 people live. People were excited to see Terrence on there. He was previously on Joe Rogan and kind of got attacked by Eric Weinstein, I believe. I mean, Eric Weinstein was saying things like, your brain isn't working right, and stop teaching. He kept telling him, stop teaching. There's something wrong with, like, the insults were just like, and obviously some people thought that was normal. Some people were outraged by it. But one of the things that Terrence said when he got on Billy Carson's show last night, he said that they were just mad that a self-taught black man came up with these inventions or came up with these discoveries about mathematics. And he said that, and when he said this, a lot of white people in the chat got mad. It was like, is it one comment said, is this a black supremacy? Is this a black supremacy channel? Like, they was mad. They were real triggered when he said this. He said every other race, and we're talking about star genetics. So he said every other race, and I didn't expect him to say this, not him. He said every other race has 6 DNA sequences. Descendants of Africans have 9 DNA sequences. So they should not be surprised that I was able to come up with these patterns and these inventions and this version of mathematics. So what I want to ask you about is, what's your thoughts on him saying that? And if descendants of Africans have 9 DNA sequences, all other races have 6 DNA sequences, where do we come from in the star system, in the star clusters? And where do they come from in the star systems, in the star clusters, to give them 6 DNA sequences and to give us 9, 7?
Wow. I mean, these matters are, there's of a deep nature. I think that this measure was actually ether, like 6 ether, 7 ether, 8 ether, 9 ether. I think this is the original concept of, the different variations between races, which also could be seen even within the hair. My deep dives on this get to planetary origins, such as those who come from Orion, which surprisingly OpenAI is naming their next model, versus those who are native to Sirius. And in all things, like, if you look at those DNA sequences and then realize that there's like a plant, seriously, that's growing in the ocean that has like 2,000, you start to almost like really wonder, is it really how many of these DNA that we have that make us the most intelligent? Okay. So maybe I wouldn't argue necessarily that as being the deciding factor, more so than that and I think, like I saw you had Asir on the show, and, I like listening to Asir's builds, for multiple reasons. One, just because he's a genius mind, and he's got a stickler for details too. And so in that way, he's already really uncovered for everybody how the societies have been completely flipped over, especially in relation to who was originally in possession of this deep occult knowledge, especially when it relates to mathematics, like algebra, or algebra, which is even Aldebaran, even Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Jabbar means a giant. You know what I mean? So you have a legacy, if you may, that reverberates a specific kind of energy. And that energy is ancient in a way that it's in the know. Let's just put it like that. Like, if it's not always hijacked and suppressed, then it operates almost like an apex from a wisdom and a knowledge level. Okay. And the easiest way that I can put this is that, and I'm not sure why this image, I'm about to flip it here, always comes out like flip, but let me flip it real quick and show here that, so just for the record, so that we know, regardless of what was going on in those empires, because you always have to understand that for sure not everybody is on the up and up. Like, you get good kings, you get bad kings, you know what I mean? So you can't necessarily say one race of people has always had like really good rulers. like consistently. They're good rulers and bad rulers is what I'm saying. But in this, and I'm going to open this up now, we had a situation that occurred where all of this master knowledge was hijacked. That's the easiest way to say the term, because that's the best term, hijack. It was taken, and this knowledge is about a lot of different stuff, like it's chemicals, it's reactions, it's planets, it's stars, it's language, it's numbers. So it's not really limited. I believe that, maybe the original idea of what Islam is as a word more corresponds to this, not this modern Islam stuff that's going on now, but like a science, if you may, of how all of it operates, including your body, etc. Okay. So for a time, for a long period of time, this knowledge, understanding that this first comes from Nagas. So Nagas are reptilian, so they have the strongest level of melanin within their bodies, right? And they became, in many ways, the base DNA that is used to create all other subsequent life forms. This still goes on inside of, like, if you're a geneticist or you're working with DNA, maybe you got a CRISPR machine, you need to use the zygote of a reptilian generally to start off the synthesis process. Is one strand DNA, right? So what I'm explaining is that I'm explaining that with this level of knowledge, is you got to tiptoe around this, right? So it's just, but I'm not tiptoeing because I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes. I'm tippy-toeing because you need all of the context, right? And the context of this is that just like we see now, this is a predominantly Caucasian dominated system when it comes to banking, right? And it comes to startups and technology and all of this kind of stuff. And that has happened because the knowledge and the wisdom of the inner workings of these things have been removed from certain cultures. Just like if you go to, even in Costa Rica, they don't have the strongest level of curriculum. If you go to countries in Africa, so only now, you go to Cambridge, you go to Yale, you go to MIT to get all of this high level, quote unquote, advanced knowledge about working in society, chips, and how to run companies and all this kind of stuff. All right. So what I'm saying is that kind of knowledge, which was still structured quite differently, was really in the hands of melanin dominant people since the beginning, because the Nagas were the ones that initiated the world into this knowledge, mainly Shukra. And again, that's where the Messiah story comes from, is the Messiah story comes from the Naga, because the Nagas came from the center of the earth to populate the surface. This is coming forth by day. That's the picture that they show, like a dark Naga coming out of the center of the earth and then bringing in, coming forth by day, meaning that now you're coming into a physical reality. You're coming out of because these beings, I mean, there's a lot of write-ups about the Nagas and their knowledge and their wisdom, because it supersedes, it is the system of knowledge that we're using here on the planet now. And this knowledge is either Venusian, but predominantly Syrian, okay? And predominantly, if you could say, they're more reptilian than they are mammalian. But mammalian is a graduation in that way. It's like reptiles become mammals, one strand becomes two strand and then keeps moving. And in that process, we gain more senses, we gain different things, and some stuff we even goes dormant. Okay. So what you're looking at is a complete process of development of multiple beings, different types, white ones, black ones, yellow ones, whatever colors you want to give them. They're all different formulas in that way, right? However, in the times that we're living in right now, it had become a white or a black thing, right? That's like a caste system. And then when that entered in, there was an agenda to remove all of the melanin dominant power structures, period. Okay. And this is like a war against the snake. That's why, like, a lot of countries like America, they have a bird. Like a lot of these newer territories, they use the bird as a symbol, and they make it like the snake is the one that is the bad one. Okay. And this is that same celestial, like those things in the air, war with those things that are on the ground. And so it's very clear that the Moors actually had all the knowledge replete, like for thousands of years. But their knowledge didn't start even with language or math, but more of dealing with entities and spirits. You see what I mean? Like, that's why I was letting everybody understand that the Sharif is the controller of spirits. And that is passed down finally today as a sheriff who's wearing a silver star, which of course, silver and pentagrams are used to bind certain entities. So now this criminal, generally a black dude, is the demon, and he's the one wearing the star and playing the role as a sheriff to capture and chain this demon and then make it even work and serve and do their bidding. You see what I mean? So because this magic works on all levels, someone base can take it and make a base game out of it, right? And say, okay, those same things that we would do on the spirit, they would do on the spiritual realm, because the Moors were also known, as it is today with the Haitians, as it is with the Africans, to take the lower spirits at times and hold them against their will or dominate them, because they're more gentle and peaceable spirits, mainly like the spirit. Some of the spirits of the water are very gentle and peaceable. So you can put these spirits in pots and make them do things that correspond to their domains, right? And they could be done, they can be made to do that under force, or also, which is like a you could use like a cunning. This means that, like with every being, there's certain things that you like to eat, right? And so they could bring something or offer something that this being can't resist to accomplish certain things. So this is the realm of Sharifs. This is the realm of the wizirs, okay? The real wizards. So then when we fast forward, all the other stuff like language and math and all that stuff is birthed from that. Okay. So this means that when you're aware of that spiritual knowledge, which it's like encoded within us for sure. Right. And I do believe that, it gives you in certain ways mineralization. That's what I like to call it. It gives you more depth because you have that. While some, they actually were referring to them as the moon people, that this was like really one of their first times into systems like this. So the longer you're in systems like this, you become more layered, you become more weathered, and you become more wise until eventually you leave as the all wise one. When you first come in, you're like base. You only have really one layer. You're really surface. And so your whole way of going at things is totally different, right? But again, to answer the question here, so what happened is when the secret societies that you would say are black secret societies, which kind of ended with even King James, Charles, Charlemagne, etc., them finally bringing the secrets of the Naga into some type of Christianized version, okay? Meaning that they took the knowledge of Nubia, which is where the Naga sat in the seat of the Delta, came forth by day, and brought forth some of the first physical beings on the planet. So this particular culture, if you may, which spread the world and populated the world, as they've already let everybody know, the root to the world is quote unquote nine ether. And I'm not sure if I kind of lost my train of thought here, but okay. So yeah. So what I'm saying is that so then when these new societies came in, and over time. And this started with the overthrow of the matriarch for sure. It's already recorded. Like if you want to go through some of that knowledge, it's in Sybil. Maybe we'll have it for a whole nother day. But there was a queen. There were queens of the Nagas. Like the Nagas were a matriarch in themselves. And there came a time where the sons challenged their mother in a way where they began to take over the kingdoms and remove the woman from her position. And in that, some say that was the reason. They call it that the dazzling face ones were went to war with the black-headed ones. This is what it's contained in the texts that are in Tamil. Okay, and so in this, what I'm saying is that it then became where all of the occult treaties no longer had melanated people as a part of them at the top. Okay, so meaning all the secret societies were overthrown, like even Freemasonry itself. I did a whole show on this, how the Illuminati entered into ancient Freemasonry and bought in ceremonial magic, bought in a whole new different set of gods and new concepts and ideals. When the old one, again, the old arc is really just based on drawing power from the moon. That's what Solomon is. It's basically the magic of the moon, and how the moon is really one of the key components to controlling everything in the game, right? So this knowledge was racialized, where now in the new society, Black people could no longer have this knowledge, because either it not only awakes a certain part of them, but remember, there are many people who practice malevolent arts that are also Black people. It actually happens quite often, right? So you can melt down easily on your own power with not being able to control your anger. You see what I mean? So let's just keep it as it is, that just because you have power doesn't mean you know how to use it. Most people have failed in trying to control power, no matter what color they are. We continue to see this. So, but not everybody. But in this, because all the treaties were made, the new treaties were made with all Anglo tribes, meaning that the Anglo and the European tribes control the secret societies now. And only the bottom initiatory levels actually have in them where, these lodges are open to Black men, if you may, coming into these knowledge. Those are recruiting grounds. Freemason is the portico or the porch. It's a recruiting ground. So basically, when you apply there, all these other societies scan you and things, or if you try to go to another society, you got to apply. This is just stuff that you learn over time from others that are either in this or on YouTube talking about it. And you read something, you put all this stuff together, you realize that they're recruiting these occultists starting off in societies like Freemasonry to determine if they're going to become a part of societies that are now like 200, 300, 400 years old. But none of these societies really contain at their top melanin dominant people anymore, right? And this is because, again, that knowledge and wisdom about how to power yourself through the energy that is moving through every day and even through yourself will probably pose as a great challenge. Okay, so in conclusion, also, then when you can kind of quell that a little bit, no more practicing with the old systems, no more practicing with the old way that things were, you can then switch everybody over to a new system where they would be completely disorientated in this new system. And this new system is not so much as church and Christianity, but really economics and how to even deal with money, debt. Like they borrow money till they die, basically leveraging money from one to another. Also, the startup companies and all this stuff that you see. But the main rules that are going on behind the scenes that are sometimes things that we're not seeing that make things very unfair, and which is more than likely what Terrence is talking about, is that on those levels, medium to top, behind closed doors, when it's time to choose who's going up or who's going down, if you're leaving it to them, they're going to pick their own every single time, and they're going to try to hold down what you have every single time. That has been my experience. At this stage, we have not only created the first conscious ecosystem, which is a social network. It's fully built out. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars out of my books, right? We built spiritual AI, right? We got inventions, like you mentioned, you got the cosmic clock. I have nanoparticles, nano mineral, right? So all this, like, it seems like they could do one of these and become multimillionaire, be all up on TV, Forbes. Look at this one. He created 4 companies. How did he do this, right? And you're still pushing a humanitarian message, right? So this is the makeup. I'm sitting here as an example. This is the makeup of somebody who's really checking all the boxes. But yes, like Terrence saying, being self-educated. Like, I didn't graduate high school. I have a GED. I read all the way up to F in the encyclopedia and began to educate myself from there, then took my Microsoft certification and then passed that. And then when I would go and start getting jobs, they wouldn't even care they didn't even ask about whether I had been to college, or they didn't ask about whether I had graduated high school. They just took that Microsoft certification and they said, we'll put you on because then they could put in their business, we have Microsoft certified agents. So that's actually when I was getting my first jobs in technology, was because I got that certification. You see what I mean? So the reality here is that when you're, just like what we read earlier today, when you're put through quite a bit, and I try personally to stay on the unified tip, because the mind has to be completely unified for it to perform the great work. But you have to know where everybody is in this whole thing. No, it's not like you got good ones and bad ones. Really, you got temperaments and formulas, right? And you have to know how to navigate them, how to utilize them, and when to stay away from them in that way, right? But in this process of us becoming successful in this day and age, we could want to be nice, and this is just giving the truth here. Like, this is not everyone. It's like saying everybody is the one that's a terrorist or something like that. But in general, when we're trying to get ahead and trying to introduce something that is on another level and taking things to the next stage, it's not really supported, right? And then, like in Terrence's case, that's like an anomaly, because don't let somehow millions of people figure if you see it. You see what I mean? That's like an anomaly in itself, because it's like millions of people watched that Joe Rogan show. So all of a sudden, millions of people were being exposed to really a lot of the stuff that Rod Hayes and you see what I mean? You can start naming a lot of people, even Sanchez, and you can name a lot of brothers that I see. You can name different people who have come into this space that have something very unique that they've mastered. You see what I mean? But it won't get that same like notoriety, like, yo, this is a new thesis and a new way to look at life, because see, they're constantly doing that. Like, they just discovered, like it was something the other day, man. I'm like, man, y'all, they just discovered that in the ocean, there's actually rocks that are responsible for bringing oxygen into the ocean. And these rocks do this through an electrolysis process. So these rocks are made of metals, and just like with an electrolysis process, these metals inside of the salt water emit, in this case, oxygen, and that creates all the oxygen that you have in the deep ocean, okay? And their concept before that was that the sun's light is needed to create photosynthesis on the surface of the water with algae and other green plants, and then these plants transfer oxygen into the water. And then this would mean, of course, as you get deeper, there would be less and less oxygen because the sun is not reaching that area and there are no green plants. And they've been rolling with this for at least 80 to 100 years now.
Right.
Until recently, they just did a simple experiment, which was they measured like this part of the water about how much oxygen was. And then they went way down there and they measured down there and found out that there was more oxygen down there than up here. What's going on? And so they went into this crazy thing, upset the whole scientific community and everything, because there's theses written on this. Right. And ultimately they found out it's these rocks. Go look it up right now. They just figured this out 2-3 weeks ago. So the reality here is that, so maybe like if you look at something like that, that almost seems like common sense to find out. But with this institution, because they lack that, see, there's a flavor to a genius. And there's a swag to the genius. It's like literally the difference between a professor who knows everything, but you're getting bored even listening to him. So you're not even really absorbing anything he's saying. He's teaching it in such a dry way. It's almost like it's not him. It's not a part of him. It's something he's examining. Okay. Versus there's another one that he'll come through, and it's like it makes up the very fiber of who he is. You can kind of see it in his eyes, and like when you look at certain cats, like you guys just look at their eyes, and you can see, okay, he really is in on this. And in that way of pursuing something, you're not just going to get the surface of it. Oh, well, must be oxygen coming from the surface. You're going to get the depths of it. Like, hey, I keep seeing this same geometry throughout everything that y'all are maybe calling like y'all highest knowledge, but you haven't even bought this geometry out yet. Like the septahedron is the last Platonic solid, but you don't see it in the Platonic solid collection because the dude just discovered it like, 5 or 6 years ago? He was calling the Chestahedron, right? Because his name is Chester. So but again, in those societies, though, they will have all of that knowledge, but more importantly, the root. So just to answer your question, like, yeah, I do feel like that it's extremely imbalanced with how we can come through as a people with innovations that also are designed to regenerate. Because that's another thing. It's like we're a regenerative force. So we really want to see the oceans clean. We want to see the children raised properly. We want to see restoration of the society. We're at that stage now in our growth. You see what I mean? But as I said before, I can't say that as a people, as a whole, as a collective, that we always been going through that in that direction. And so this game for us has been really navigating all the way from the netherworld. Because remember, the ocean is the netherworld. That's why a lot of the mythos, even Osiris and Isis and all this stuff, all this plays out in the ocean. Like even in the African traditions and the magic, all that stuff plays out with entities that are in the ocean. It's already known that Saturn's kingdom is in the ocean. All the technologies that we're dealing with on the surface are manufactured first and tested and everything in the ocean. And then the ocean also has portals to other spaces and time, right? And but again, for a person who can't even figure out that there has to be something else generating oxygen for us to have oxygen down there, for them to not release a society that they have even come to that level of awareness yet, right now, it definitely seems like somebody not to be following. So I'll put it like that. So in this way, not so much as to go into beef with the scientific institutions and royal societies and all that, because they know what they've done. They've stole all the knowledge, period. It's more of to ask ourselves these days, who should we really be following, quote unquote, based on whatever our goals are.
Indeed.
Right.